From underground fight clubs
to undercover hitmen.
This week we'll be discussing Monkey Man, Hitman, and 8.5.
This is The Film Angle. Welcome to The Film Angle, a podcast where we dive deep into the latest releases and unearth the classics to better our cinephilic curiosity. I'm Alex.
And I'm Kris.
Let's get into it. Kris, how have you been?
I'm very well, Alex. Thank you for asking. Yourself?
Yeah, not bad at all, not bad at all. I feel like we've got a bit of a treat of an episode this week. I feel like it's been a nice bundle of films here, if you ask me.
Yeah, very man-centered.
Yes, the title is going to be quite weird. This man and this man.
And I think even our other film that we're talking about, our BFI film, Fellini's 8.5, is also a very man-centered film, even though it's not got man in the title.
Horny Man, the movie, maybe.
Oh, you said it, not me. But yes, that's just Italian cinema in general, right?
I think it's just Fellini.
Just Fellini. Yeah, man, I'm not doing too bad. So this has kind of been partially a bit of a catch-up for us. As we alluded to last week, Monkey Man had been previously released. We didn't get round to catching up on it, unfortunately. But since has came out in VOD, so myself, yourself, and hopefully a lot of people listening have had a chance to catch up on it. And Hitman, the newest film from Richard Linklater, stretching a muscle that he hasn't sort of stretched before, has released this new film called Hitman, starring Glenn Powell, and it just came out on last Friday. So yeah, we're excited to talk about that too, and hopefully everybody's had a little bit of time to see that also.
Yeah, and you should, because it's a Richard Linklater film, and we love Richard Linklater. And it's funny, Netflix are actually chucking the money into the marketing on this one. Maybe because they know they have a star in Glenn Powell, but we'll get into all of that later when we review that. But unless you have anything else to say, Kris, I mean, shall we just jump into Monkey Man?
Let's go for it.
Monkey Man is the directorial debut of Dev Patel, who created his own action film after being frustrated at the lack of roles in this genre for someone who looks like him. Monkey Man follows Kid, played by Patel, an underground fighter who works his way into Mumbai's criminal scene in order to enact his revenge on the corrupt head of the police force who killed his mum and torched his home.
Yeah, that's a pretty grim way to start a film.
Yeah.
I've been really excited for this for a long time, Alex. I know this is a sort of a collaboration with Jordan Peele and his production company Monkey Paw. So obviously that has a little bit of an inherent pedigree sort of at the start of that. Dev Patel, I mean, recently has been a really magnetic. I think he's always been a great actor, but since, performances like Lion and The Green Knight, has made him somebody who is a silhouette on screen that I enjoy to see, and I have to see what he does next. He is always sort of he brings a sort of like a very athletic masculinity to the screen that is kind of a new evolution of where he came from before. So I just find him very charged as a screen performance on screen.
He never plays the same role, I find. I think he's very interesting in that way.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely changes it up a lot, and I can understand where his kind of frustration came of being like, watching these action films and being like, I want to be a part of this, and Hollywood being like, no, this isn't right for you, and him just being like, fine, I'll do it myself, and you got to commend him for that. Funny enough, Jordan Peele didn't come into this film until a lot later on. It was actually a Netflix film, and or at least the rights were with Netflix, and they dropped it due to some of the kind of I guess more politically charged aspects of the script. They sold it, and Jordan Peele's company picked it up and when he watched it, and he was like, well, this deserves a theatrical release, and gave it one. To be fair, we both obviously watching it video on demand, which, you know, haven't seen it is a slight shame, because I do think it would have been great to see in the cinema as well. But I don't think it detracts from it either. It is a good looking film on the big screen or the small. But then again, TVs have come a long way.
Yeah, I completely agree. This has like a very deliberate, very well conceived, just sort of aesthetic to the film. The cinematography is bathed in these sort of red and blue neon lights all the way through. It feels like the movie is almost always set during one night. You know, this has this twilight sort of surreal, dreamlike air to it. You know, which is really good because it makes us hyper focused on the revenge story. And you know, I can't detract from all the merits that this film has. I think, like I said before, Dev Patel just has this urgency on screen. He really does feel like a sort of cathartic hero that we can get behind and get on his journey. And I think his performance, although aloof at the start, is designed on purpose. We are giving parts of the story in backflashes to how he got to this point, why he's on this revenge path. And it just feels really well earned. I can't say, though, you know, this film does seem to be quite well revered by mostly everybody. And I was really excited for this film, Alex, but I got a few reservations, and unfortunately that my enthusiasm was a little bit dampened as this film just sort of progressed. I found it kind of hard to engage with and get on board. I think it's got to do a little bit with the structure of that storytelling, the movement of time, and by the time that we're supposed to care about certain characters, I don't know if I was always there. I don't know. How did you feel?
Yeah, I don't think I struggled as much, but I think that's because the first 40 minutes of this film really, really hooked me. And I'm saying 40, it was like a roundabout part there. I really loved the kind of methodical process into getting into the kind of crime syndicate that, you know, based in this tower block, starting from the kitchens and working your way up. And not
stylish.
fully knowing what the goal is. You know, he's teaching he's befriended a stray puppy and is teaching it how to like carry things and all that kind of stuff in order to one day bring a gun into that area. And I loved all that. I was completely in, and I also was in because I didn't know this was going to be quite so plot heavy. From the trailers, I thought we were going to get a pretty maybe light on plot action film. And I don't think it necessarily is that. We're with Dev Patel the whole way through, and that first 40, 50 minutes until he takes the first kind of strike at the head of the police in the bathroom, which is a fantastic action scene. And I think this is where the film peaks, because I think that is where that is the best action scene, followed by a chase through the streets of Mumbai, you know, and I think it's into a brothel at one point, and he's fighting a guy who's swinging an axe at him in another really creative action scene, and then for me, this is where the film kind of dips. It
takes a big breath after that. I mean, a big breath,
really a big breath. The pacing just jumps off of a cliff. And that's fine, because, you know, you got to have moments to breathe in these films, and I was fine for that. But the moment to breathe was quite long, and I was itching for the action to come back in. And during this time, you know, our villain, who is still very much the head of the police force, is almost relegated to, you know, muscle man. And Dev Patel's character, you know, learns that he should actually be fighting for the people of Mumbai, who are being there's an election going on. There's this guru called Baba, and he is not everything he says he is, and he's just as corrupt as kind of the police force and everybody else. But he's bringing in this idea that he's this peaceful, loving guy. So all of a sudden, you know, there's an even bigger bad that Dev Patel learns that he should also be there to take down. And we get to those moments. We come back to the tower and work our way up with this newfound strength through kind of some form of religious mythology that you're not 100% sure if he has empowered the magical abilities of the Monkey Man or whether it's more of a kind of like I'm just fired up and ready to go kind of thing. And I do like that. But I never found the action really hit the same kind of highs as it did earlier in the film. And when we get to our kind of big bad Baba, it just didn't feel as kind of emotionally charged or anything like that. So it was kind of one of those films that peaks really high at the start, dips quite a lot, brings it up a little bit, but just just not perfect. But you know what? I did have a lot of fun with this film. Maybe more fun than I thought I was going to have. So
okay,
it was a good Friday night.
Okay. I'm coming at this from a slightly different angle. I thought I was going to have more fun than I ended up having. You mentioned at the start of the film that Patel's, his character's just called Kid, that Kid's sort of intentions are quite aloof at the start, that it takes us a while to kind of find out what's driving all this action and all this movement at the beginning. And I actually think that was, for me at least, to the film's detriment. I really struggled to kind of get in. I've seen a lot of style, and this is where the film is kind of two halves and two odds for me. That when it's stylish and when it's having its very obvious self-winking nods to John Wick and that sort of subgenre that's kind of came off the back of that, it's really cool. I mean, it's really crunchy. It's very gory and gruesome sometimes, almost Tarantino-esque in that action, but also just really has this real muscular, excitedness to the camera movement. That's really, really fun. But when we're sort of introduced to this sort of side plot of Kid, Dev Patel's character, trying to be this pillar for the marginalized community, to manifest his anger into somewhere else, sure, that's peppered and that's mentioned throughout the film, but I never felt that was what was driving this film. I think it was too bogged down in trying to look cool that I completely lost all of that motive and all that emotion. And by the time we get to all the corrupt officials, the Baba character, I just did not care. I really struggled to kind of be on board with this revenge story. I didn't feel compelled by these villains.
Were you compelled at least by the head of the police force? Because I was compelled by him.
That's a screen presence, sure. I mean, but we get this.
I wanted him dead.
Yeah, I think the movie tries a little bit too hard to make you hate him. It's alluded to very early on that how his mother passed away and how she was murdered by this guy. And then later on, it comes around again via this sort of hallucinogenic sequence where Kid goes back into his past and kind of tries to decipher what happened that night. And we get this full 10-minute extended sequence of the night his mother was killed. And I get it. You're trying too hard to make me care. And I saw the machinations of it too clearly. And this is not something I was searching for. Like Alex, I really wanted to be engaged, and I love a good revenge story. As we talked about with Furiosa, I love these sort of revenge paths and sort of deciphering what works here. But I just feel the attention was all over the place, that I couldn't grasp onto one thing at a time. So I felt kind of detached from the whole experience. But I can't take away from the film looks incredible. It does look incredible for the most part.
Yeah, and considering it is a very, very small budget as well. And
Exactly.
I think there are times when you can see that it is very limited by that.
Sure. There's some CGI sequences that are a bit like, I can tell. I can see the strings here a little bit. Yeah,
a lot of close-ups, especially in the kind of Mumbai chase scene on the kind of motorized tuk-tuk.
But it didn't detract from the experience. I don't think it was that kind of film anyway. So,
no.
Yeah.
But I am going to disagree with you on the flashback scene. I think it should have been shown in full earlier on instead of these kind of flourishes of like artiness.
Okay,
but I do
perhaps
think
you're right.
that it was a lot more kind of violent and horrible than I thought it was going to be. And I was particularly affected because, I don't know, maybe you're just a smarter viewer than me, but I did not put two and two together that his hands were burns from trying to put his mum's body out.
Mhm.
after she had been kind of set on fire whilst
Well,
still
yeah.
alive. And I found that particularly disturbing. And I liked that element in terms of like a story beat and just kind of truly wearing the scars literally on his hands. And yeah, I wanted that guy dead. And I wanted him dead more after seeing that. But I do agree. I think it should have come in earlier. I think the film is kind of a little bloated. I think you could definitely knock it down to an hour and a half and not
Oh,
have
yeah.
so many of these little kind of dreamlike moments that are kind of splintered in throughout. Just
Yeah.
feels a little bloated at times.
Although we do have that deep breath moment where Kid is sort of going into hiding, he's retraining, and we have that backflash sequence. I do really like the scene where he is punching a punch bag and to the rhythm of a guy playing a drum. I thought that was really fun and a really cool kind of nod to Bollywood cinema in general. Like it just seemed very like a real sort of nod to that sort of background that Dev Patel is sort of interested in. So I did enjoy those little fun flourishes. But yeah, I think visually awesome film from that perspective. But story wise, I was just a little bit frustrated with some elements for me.
Yeah, I can see that. I think for me, it wasn't so much story wise; it was more pacing, more than anything. But yeah, I wanted to feel more for that final confrontation between Kid and Baba, but the film maybe just didn't work hard enough to make me think that like he was the one that we should have been going after the whole time. No.
Yeah, and a little bit video game.
But yeah, very video gamey, wasn't it at times? I think, but in a good way, in a cool way.
Yeah.
It was good, and to be honest, like I think as it's a debut film, and for an action film, it's pretty good. Obviously, we have our frustrations with certain elements of kind of, for you, some of the story stuff, for me, some of the pacing stuff. But who knew that Dev Patel was, quite so thrifty behind the camera, and obviously we knew in front of the camera, but it was cool to see him in this kind of role. So I'm interested to see what he does next. I assume he's going to stick to kind of going forward and doing some more directorial stuff, unless this truly was just like, I just want to be in an action film. I'm just going to do it myself. But I like
didn't
to
feel like that at all.
I like to think he's going to do some more of this because it was very interesting.
No, it did definitely not seem like, oh, this is my opportunity to cast myself in this type of film. I think he does things from a directorial standpoint with the action sequences that's inventive and new, and some things you haven't seen before. That it had its own reason to exist, and he definitely has a visual flair, something that a lot of actor to directors just don't have. They seem to really prefer to like zoom in on the actor's face for an entire film. And Dev Patel wasn't shy of kind of flexing the muscle cinematically that he obviously had within him. So yeah, apart from, although the film didn't necessarily always work for me, it did not detract that this is obviously a guy he's multi-talented, and I'd be really excited to see what he comes up with next, because visually it's a treat. The next film we're reviewing this week is Hitman, which is the latest film from one of our favorite directors, Richard Linklater. It's loosely based on a true story of a man working part-time for the police as an undercover hitman for hire. Glenn Powell stars as Gary, the said undercover hitman who breaks protocol to help Maddie, played by Adria Arjona, flee from her abusive husband, and in doing so gets his life turned upside down. Alex, what did you think of Hitman?
Well, I quite enjoyed this one. Like you mentioned, Richard Linklater is probably one of our favorite directors, up there in top 5, top 10 at least, I would say. He's directed at least 2 of my favorite films of all time. Yeah, I love him a lot, and I'm always excited to see a new Linklater film. His previous film, Apollo, was it 13 and a half or 12 and a half?
Apollo, was it not Apollo 10 and a half?
Or 8 and a half? We should know.
We should check that.
Wait there.
Apollo 10 and a half.
Maybe I said 8.5 because of the film we're talking later.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, Apollo 10.5. Yeah, no, his previous film, Apollo 10.5, kind of dropped onto Netflix with no fanfare. And it was such a shame because it was a really, really good film.
It was
and
almost impossible to find unless you were looking for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and employed some of those kind of like old school techniques that Linklater had been known for, the old school kind of like rotoscoping, but there was definitely more of like a modern edge to it. It was brilliant. And he's kind of teamed up with them again, despite not having any marketing on that previous film. But here they seem to be throwing all the money at Hitman, which is great because it's a really fun. I don't even know what to call it. Really, it's a weird mix of genres.
It's its own thing, isn't it? That's what made the whole experience really refreshing for me. It just felt like, I felt like I've seen all these elements before, but packaged this way, it felt really fresh and new.
Yeah, it's part rom-com, part screwball comedy, part noir, part thriller in places. Yeah, no, it's really interesting, and I had a lot of fun watching it. I think Glenn Powell, I kind of finally understand the hype behind him. I've always liked him in films. Obviously, he's worked with Linklater a few times. Everybody Wants Some was kind of the biggest collaboration, I believe. He was in Top Gun, Maverick from a couple years ago, and clearly kind of risen to stardom with Anyone But You. I've yet to see it, but as rom-coms go, I think it made a bit of an impact.
Yeah, it made a lot of money.
It made a lot of money. So it was. People have been touting him as the next kind of big movie star. And I don't think it was until this film that I was like, yeah, do you know what? I can see it. He's very charismatic in this role. He gets to have a lot of fun. Clearly, I didn't realize until the end that he'd written or co-written the script.
Yes,
so, it was a great vehicle for him really to play all these kind of different wacky characters and kind of, be the nerdy, uncharismatic Gary, but then how does he turn it into the cool, kind of hyper-sexualized killer hitman Ron and work with that? Very charismatic, very great, and just really fun to watch throughout the whole film.
It's that conceit that you have to buy into before you even watch the film. I seen the trailer and I knew that Glenn Powell was playing a person who would kind of go under the radar in general, and I'm like, it's Glenn Powell. He's like absolutely shredded, but and he looks great. He's very charismatic. But on here, I really bought into that sort of character at the beginning of Gary Johnson, the very unassuming college professor who feeds his cats when he gets home and is he bird watches and is a very unassuming guy. It was funny how I think it was that performance. It was just so entertaining from that point of view. But once you mix him in with Adria Arjona, have you seen her in anything else recently? I thought I recognized her. Was she in Morbius or something? Like
she was in Morbius. She was in she's been in a few things that I've seen. She was in one of Pacific Rim films, as in like the second one, Triple Frontier. It says here I've seen her in. Oh, and Andor. She was in Andor.
Ah, yes, of course.
We both love Andor.
Yeah, great show.
Do you feel like maybe she fell into the background of these other films and / TV show, and here was like truly like, oh
yeah, who's this person?
Something. Like who is this great actress? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think this movie really shines whenever both of these people are on screen together. I think, everybody, I hate to compare or diss another film, but a film I didn't engage with as much as others did previously this year, The Fall Guy. A lot of people praised the chemistry between Gosling and Emily Blunt, although, yeah, it's there. But then I watched this and I'm like, these two have chemistry. This is sizzling. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's such one of the best sort of dynamic duos we've seen in pretty recent films, to be honest. So anytime they're sharing any dialogue together, the tension, the sexual tension between them two is always sizzling and bubbling underneath the surface, and really kind of warms you into the comedic tone of the film even more. I'm buying both of these guys, both their relationship. Yeah, I mean, the scenario is a little bit zany and insane, but like Linklater just kind of has this sort of, he has his one foot in reality, that kind of that Boyhood aesthetic, that School of Rock aesthetic, but it really lends itself to comedy very well. This is a bit of a dress up movie, Glenn Powell, and I guess the whole theme of the film is quite explicit at the beginning. He meets up with an ex-wife or ex-girlfriend at the beginning of the film after teaching a lesson at his college, and she sort of said she's been reading into the theory that people can't change or people can change over time, that it's a biological thing, that people can actually become a different persona if they work hard enough on it. And this is what the film kind of turns out to be, as Gary kind of goes into being a fake hitman, entrapping people who are planning to murder their spouses or other people that they don't like. He starts to adopt this persona whenever he meets Adria's character, Madison, and kind of instantly falls in love for her, or feels sort of empathetic about her plight, that her abusive husband is a dangerous man and she wants to get rid of him. And he just falls into this sort of behavior and this relationship with her that he can't get out of. And obviously the police force that he works for, his other counterpart Jasper, who is a recently disgraced fake hitman who Gary sort of swapped his role for, he is hot on their tail, and it brings this sort of like third party dynamic, this element of danger throughout. It's kind of on its surface, it's all been done before, but Linklater's just brings this sort of signature humorous tone to the characters. There's almost something Coen-esque about these people that Gary kind of entraps. The first guy that he meets with, he has to really convince him that he is like a proper, like a hitman. He's a tough guy, and the sort of the interactions that he has with that guy at the beginning are really funny and really kind of made me fall in love with the film pretty early on. So as this sort of dynamic gets more complex as it goes on, you're just up for the ride. I had Lauren at home with me who was feeling quite ill that night, and she said, I'm going to go down to bed after 10 minutes of putting on this film. And then she ended up watching the whole thing with me and really, really enjoyed it. So, it's the power of that. It's a very unassuming film to begin with, but just grows and grows and grows. And there's some incredible scenes. Do you want to talk about the scene whenever he has to go to Madison's home and there's this sort of interplay that they got to go together. So he is being sort of caught out as helping her and aiding her escape after murdering her husband. They're kind of both being complicit in this thing, and he has to kind of play off of her and guide her through. He's wearing a wire, and the police are hearing it from outside, and he has to guide her through the conversation to kind of get her out of danger, and so that they can both run away together. And that scene is so well done. This is a podcast medium, I can't really show you it, but it's it's just so inventive. Linklater as a director, his editing is so refined and so fun, but Glenn Powell is just selling that moment so well.
Yeah, well, you've got this brilliant dynamic of multiple characters all involved in one scene. You have, the certain members of the police force who know nothing. You have Jasper, who knows something. You have Gary, who knows everything, and then you have Madison.
Jasper, you can't tell if he's like stupid or smart, which is a really fun dynamic the whole way through the movie.
Yeah, and you can't fully tell if he's kind of like wants to give Gary a bit of a pass, or if he, if he's jealous, or he wants his job back, or he wants to get something over on him. Very interesting dynamic, and that scene just plays out brilliantly. Everybody's on different terms, knowing different levels of things, and it could get so complicated, but it works so well. That was my favorite scene. I had a massive smile on my face during that scene, because it was kind of silly and brilliant all at the same time. It was great. I wanted to go back to what you were saying about kind of the themes of the film and the kind of explicit telling of them very early on and throughout the film. I think that was maybe one of my like slight negatives on the film, is it's not very subtle in terms of what it's trying to explore. There's no subtext here. Every time we're in the college/school scenario, it is very open as to all right, so this is what we're trying to explore in this film, and this is the kind of things we're interested in. And I did think like, okay, I get it. I know what you're trying to do. You don't need to kind of like spoon feed it to me.
It's a film designed to kind of reward its audience very easily. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think Linklater is very relaxed, and I think you can see that in the film. I think that there are a few kind of scenes that maybe like go on a tad too long, and I do think the genres sometimes don't fully mesh together. But there was something that about the kind of rough around the edges feel of it at times, which was kind of charming as well. Like I like the fact that it wasn't too polished, because I think there is a very ultra polished version of this film that probably works as well, but like I don't know, something about the roughness of it all that I like. And I just think Linklater, he's so interested in his films kind of playing out just as they are, that I kind of love him for that. He's not trying to create like this perfectly crafted film, this thing. He wants them to kind of live and breathe on their own. I find that very interesting. But yeah, it was difficult because like I said at the start, what do you even class this film as? It goes through many different variations. It turns into almost like erotic thriller at one point in a very kind of sexy montage scene. Is very interesting, But yeah, man, I had a blast. You know, despite some of the elements where I'm like, this doesn't fully work, but you know, I was just having fun with it throughout.
Linklater, did you have any doubt that it was going to be good or bad? It was just very alarming to know that he was kind of doing something different. But you're right, it's that relaxed tone that he brings to every film. The film isn't like straight away going like, I'm going to make you laugh as many times as possible. It comes through the characters, the performances and the interactions, and it builds and builds and builds. And you're right, there's another universe where this could have been done by, you know, I could see this as an Edgar Wright film. It kind of reminded me of like, you know, it had that little visual aesthetic of something like Baby Driver. You know, it could have been a fine-tuned, hyper sort of to the point film, but it might have been too much sheen for this sort of material. And I think this is just a film based on, it sounds too simplistic to say, but two performers who give us probably some of the best chemistry we've seen in years.
Yeah, yeah.
Hitman, you can catch it on Netflix. Please let us know what you think about the film. I'd be really interested to hear how people think. I know critics really responded this well, but I do think this kind of does cater to a specific taste. I don't know if it'll be for everybody. Be interested to see how people respond to it.
Though it might bring in a lot of people because, you know, I think Glenn Powell has become a star. He's an overnight star. It's overnight. He's been working for a while, so he probably doesn't feel like it's overnight.
It all started from Spy Kids 3D.
Exactly. And we get to see him again later in this summer when Twisters comes out. And you know what? I'm getting more and more excited for that film. I'm going to say me too, the most recent trailer that came out promised a very fun time at the cinema. Something that isn't, you know, your Geostorms and stuff like that, because I guess it could easily be in this day and age.
Oh, God.
But there was something very fun about what that film promises to be. And you know what? I'm up for more Glenn Powell at this point. I think this is going to be his year.
Oh yeah, he kind of is a modern embodiment of that 90s action adventure spirit that we've sort of lost. And he is insanely likable. He can play nasty. He can play, you know, a lovable being at the same time. So yeah, I'm with you, Alex. Bring on Twisters. Oh,
Twisters.
Sorry.
There's two of them now.
We might. It's like Sharknado or something.
It is a little bit. It is. Anyway, that's been Hitman. So, Chris, I thought we could change it up a bit again this week, if you don't mind me stealing your bit.
Well, I'm offended. I'm going to have to bin my segment for this week for next week now.
Just push it 1 week. Just, you know, help me out here. It's because I have been getting very excited about the casting of the new Knives Out film, which is called Wake Up Dead Man. We've only had a couple of these from in as a franchise so far, but director Ryan Johnson, we love him. He always seems to be able to gather up quite an ensemble of like incredible actors to be part of these Benoit Blanc murder mysteries, and it's always fun to see the casting. We've got like a new actor like every other day over the last couple of weeks, and each one is like a really, really interesting choice. So in this one so far, they probably have added even more actors by the time this episode comes out. But so far, they've already cast Kaylee Spaney, Josh O'Connor, Andrew Scott, Glenn Close, Jeremy Renner of Renovations fame, Kerry Washington, Thomas Hayden Church, Josh Brolin, Mila Kunis, and Daryl McCormack. That's all alongside Daniel Craig returning, obviously, as Benoit Blanc. So that made me think, wouldn't it be interesting if if I was to task you or task us, because I have a list myself, with casting the fourth installment of the Knives Out franchise. So, what kind of range of actors, I'm thinking maybe 8, would you find interesting to put together in a Knives Out film? But before we go on to that,
sure.
What are your thoughts on Knives Out so far, I guess?
Yeah, I would say I am a fan of both of these films. Probably the first more than the second. I was a big fan of Glass Onion. It sort of carried on the mythology of Benoit Blanc. Was probably the element of both of these films I enjoyed the most. I really love seeing Craig in this sort of extravagant mode, and which was really risky. It was a really risky move for him to go for this sort of Savannah accent and really, and he sort of just leaned into it. He's kind of became the new sort of Poirot, and I think the franchise is thankful to his character more than the giant ensemble. So yeah, I really enjoy these films for those performances.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. First one, I with you, I think is the better of the two, but both have been a lot of fun and kind of this very interesting modern take on those kind of old school murder mystery films. And so far there's been a theme with the murderers where they've both played a big Marvel hero. So is Jeremy Renner going to be the murderer of the next one?
Yeah, he might get run over by a snowmobile.
Ooh, too soon, Chris. Too soon. This
is funny. I'm thinking in my head here about this list of how I would come up with these 8 actors I would cast. And it's quite easy just to kind of come up with people pretty quickly. Although I think Ryan Johnson's doing such a great job of getting all these A-list actors. I think by the time he has, Knives Out 5 or 6, if he ever goes that far, you'll have exhausted the entire of Hollywood. But it's a really impressive cast. Obviously people like Kaylee Spaney, very up and coming. Everybody wants, their hands on these young actors like Josh O'Connor and Andrew Scott coming in the back of some really great critically acclaimed films. But you can always tell the machinations of how they cast these things. They want a little bit of older pedigree. They want a little bit of the younger sort of injection of talent. And I've kind of thought about that also, in my casting. I've kind of tried to think like a casting director here, and but also appeal to my sensibilities and what I would like to see. So yeah.
Interesting. Well, I think you're right in terms of like it is quite fun just to pick, very either up and coming or well established actors of being like, how would they work together in this world that doesn't take itself too seriously, but has enough kind of dramatic flair for them to exercise their acting chops, but have fun with it along the way. So go on then.
Okay,
go on, casting director Chris Steed. Give me your list of actors for the next film.
Just call me Nina Gold. I'm just going to bash these out really, really quickly. Feel free to interject if you think they're awful or terrible, whatever. First one I can think of is Brendan Gleeson.
Okay.
So always being, despite being like a larger than life screen presence, has always been the chameleon of an actor. He can play nasty, he can play sinister pretty well, but I love him in his more lovable roles. I'm thinking like The Guard in Bruges, 28 Days Later, etc. So just to bring that little bit of Irish charm and humor to the franchise that it hasn't had yet, I think that would be pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
Tilda Swinton, I think that one's a no-brainer.
Yep.
Immediately suitable for the role, as Swinton is a master at playing cool and calculated characters with ulterior motives.
She's an absolute chameleon as well. Just
Yeah.
kind of is just molds perfectly into any role she's given.
Yeah, I just think she belongs on this list. I'm surprised she hasn't been attached to one of these projects already, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a curveball, Alex. Zac Efron.
Okay.
I've been really impressed by Zac Efron lately, coming off the back of Iron Claw and even Ricky Stenicki.
Yeah.
And could equally see him playing a straight man or the comic relief in something like this.
Yep.
So it would be interesting to see him stretch that kind of muscle also. Another one that's kind of came to mind is Vanessa Kirby. Being really impressed with Kirby from the Mission Impossible franchise as the White Widow. Sounds like a Knives Out character in of itself. Very good at menacing, but being likable on screen. So just an incredible screen presence would bring a little bit an injection of that sort of sinisterness. Kyle MacLachlan, another curveball. No stranger to trying every genre, and Kyle has this sort of charismatic, eccentricity which is disarmingly charming and unhinged at the same time. So I think that'll be pretty perfect for that genre. Lupita Nyong'o, an actor who we haven't seen as much of recently. I know she's coming up in the new Quiet Place film, but I was completely sort of enamored with her performance in Jordan Peele's Us. So she is just a really exciting actor who has an incredible range, chooses her projects wisely. I reckon she could slide into any role that you give her, someone who just sort of embodies complex and layered characters and would bring an extra layer of nuance to an otherwise larger than life cast. These last two, Alex, I think you probably would just expect these sort of people to work well in this sort of role.
Sure.
Benedict Cumberbatch. Really enjoyed him in Wes Anderson's Roald Dahl shorts last year. A lot of charisma, perfect sort of detective counterpart to the Daniel Craig role. So this probably would be the most redundant and lazy casting choice by me. But and could be, it's typecasting. The guy played Sherlock, for goodness sake, but it seemed like a no-brainer. And lastly, I went for Emma Stone. What can she do? She's funny. She's got dramatic depth, knows just when and when not to dial up characters, and is always great in an ensemble playing off of other characters brilliantly as well. That's something you got to think of. You got to not go for lone wolves here. So no stranger to playing an unexpected role. So those are my 8.
Yeah, and no stranger either to just going completely out there with her performances and just, being able to do it brilliantly either way. Actually, Emma Stone and Zac Efron were very big considerations on my list, but they just didn't make it. But
it's interesting that you went for Efron, because I thought that was a real sort of out of nowhere pick.
Well, I had watched The Iron Claw recently, and I was like, oh man, he's so good in this. I really love him in The Iron Claw. Yeah, that was great watching that one again. All right, that was a great list. It just shows you how easy it is to put some brilliant people together that you wouldn't always consider putting together in any other kind of film, but they would just work in a Knives Out film. So
it feels very easy. I think it's all just about getting the phone calls and the agents and the money. you could write these films very easily otherwise if you had your dream cast.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, here's my list. So first on the list is Dan Stevens, just because I watched Abigail recently, which I really enjoyed, and obviously he was in Godzilla X Kong as well, and he is just very good at just playing very out there, silly characters, and you can tell he's having a lot of fun at the same time. And
I don't know, in Eurovision, he's so funny in that.
Exactly. I don't know what kind of role you'd give him, but it doesn't matter. He can't be cornered into one. He could just do a whole range of things and play it however you want, and just add that comedic element as well that I think the Knives Out films do have. Second, I put this on because it was rumored for a long time that this person was going to be in the third film, and they weren't in it. And I just thought, you missed out there. It's really interesting. Lindsay Lohan.
Okay.
I just thought,
coming off the back of Irish Wish.
Exactly. It would be great to see her go from.
I would love a redemption story there.
The redemption, like see her come back into something that isn't serious, but is probably more serious than some of the stuff she's been doing. But just to see her play around in that kind of world again would be great. Next choice, which was probably an obvious one for me because I love him, Adam Driver. He's worked with Ryan Johnson before. He's done some really good work with him. It would be great.
Kylo Ren.
Yeah, he could just be Kylo Ren in this. It's fine. Yeah, honestly, just, he does have comedic chops, but I think you could put him into a more serious role and play it really deadpan, and it would just be great.
Great.
But for somebody to add definitely a bit more comedic flair, and she's very much up and coming star right now. Ayo Edebiri, obviously great in Bottoms, but also funny, but definitely more dramatic role in The Bear. I just think seeing her being able to exercise those chops, I think her and Ryan Johnson would be a perfect match in this universe. I think she'd just be able to nail it. So I definitely want her in there.
That's a great pick, yeah.
And then going, again, probably more into another kind of comedic element. You can tell that these people are all just from like films and TV shows that have really kind of hit me recently. But I thought Nathan Fielder would be great. He's so awkward. He's perfect for just bringing awkward comedy into this world, and you would probably suspect him to be the murderer. He's so awkward at times, but obviously it's just his performance in everything he does. He's just so great at really kind of making you feel uncomfortable at the same time.
He was in The Curse recently, right?
Oh my god, I love The Curse, man. Honestly,
I haven't seen it yet still. I know you loved it. Emma Stone was in that too, obviously.
She was, and they worked so well together. And she is working with him again in his directorial debut film that just got picked up by A24. Honestly, Nathan Fielder and Emma Stone are like a weird match made in heaven. It is, The Curse is one of the best TV shows I've seen in a long time. It's so good. Next, I thought I'd bring the A-list glitz and glam to this. I thought Cate Blanchett would be great. She's perfect. Again, very similar to Tilda Swinton in that way that she can just be a chameleon in these roles.
Gravitas to the screen, yeah.
Exactly. Like some kind of elder
the scenery.
stateswoman or something like that, maybe. I don't know. I feel that's a bit harsh, actually, elder stateswoman. She's not that old, but she brings a wisdom to her performances, I think, because she's just...
But also like a decadence, like you could see her being like a rich asshole at the same time,
Yeah, just maybe she should just play Tar again.
Oh my goodness, just Lydia Tar. Yeah.
Lydia Tar. Then next would be Stephen Yeun, just because I think we just don't see enough Stephen Yeun, considering how good he is in films we've seen him in and TV shows. I think he deserves to be more prominent in this world. So give him a leading role in the next one. He is great.
Yeah, I really liked, because that his performance in Nope actually kind of lends itself to that argument. He's just very good at doing elusive but juvenile, and he's more diverse than people think.
Yeah, and he should be a leading man, and he was going to be a big part of, I can't remember which Marvel film. It was going to be like their Suicide Squad. What's it called? Oh, Thunderbolts.
Okay.
But due to strikes and that kind of stuff, they ended up, it was a clash of schedules, and he had to be recast. And that was such a shame, even though, Marvel's a slightly dying property. It would have been good to see him out there in a big blockbuster. But yeah, final one on the list. And I think I am definitely leaning towards a more comedy version of Knives Out, because I have been bringing in a lot of comedic performances here, so maybe I really just want an all out there funny version of this, but I put Alana Glazer because I just think she's hilarious, and if you haven't seen Broad City, she's great in that, but there's a bunch of things she's been in that have been great, and I just think she'll bring a different kind of energy to the film that would be interesting. But yeah, that would be my cast for Knives Out 4. Don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but
yeah, it's important to think about it, because like you can easily go down the path of picking like the same type of actor, and then the whole thing would just be one-sided. So it's trickier than it sounds, I think. But yeah, this has been fun.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll lean too much into the comedy now that I've been saying it out loud. But
those actors that you've mentioned, though, that you've kind of casted in a comedic role, are also, they're so diverse and capable of doing the opposite too. So that's what's so good about, I think, both of our picks. I think you could cast them in multiple directions.
Yeah.
So don't beat yourself up.
Thank you. Well, I hope you don't mind me stealing your bit there, Chris. I just thought it would be a fun exercise to kind of play around with that. And
Well, we'll see. We'll compare whenever if a new Knives Out 4 comes out in the future. We'll see if we got it right.
We should go back. We should go back to our list and see if anybody that we've mentioned actually gets spoken about. It's going to be a few years yet, but yeah, return then.
And if none of them get mentioned, we won't mention it.
That's a good idea, actually. That's a good idea. Well, thank you, Kris, for letting me steal your bit. And we'll get back. We'll get back to reviewing some films.
So, long-time listeners will know that this is now the section of the show where we catch up with our ongoing series, our Blind Spots on the Sight and Sound Greatest Films of All Time list. We are slowly making our way down, Alex, the list of films that we haven't seen before. This week, we are on number 32. We're getting there, guys. We're getting there. According to the Letterboxd, which is our second Federico Fellini film on the list, 8.5. 8.5 follows Guido, a film director who is struggling to finish the production of his latest film. The sci-fi is also semi-biographical about Fellini's own life. As he takes time to overcome his creative block, Guido is hounded by the crew and many women of his past, vying for a part in the film, causing him to fantasize about his own life and how things could be different. That's a pretty hard film to sum up, but I think we kind of got it there.
Yeah.
We'll discuss some more.
Yeah, it is a very difficult film to sum up because the whole film is like in and out of almost like a dream conscious state.
Sure.
But I, if you don't mind, I thought I'd talk first a little bit about my relationship to the film because it is not a blind spot for me. I checked back through my own Letterboxd records and I watched this film, I think back in 2018, so about 6 years ago now, which is kind of a mad thing to say in of itself.
I know, it's crazy.
I did not like this film at all back in 2018. I rated it 2.5 stars on Letterboxd and I was not very impressed by it. And I thought that it was a film that kind of had a message and hit you over the head with it many times, and I just found it a bit of a chore to get through. So I wasn't looking forward to this rewatch, I won't lie. I chucked it on in the morning when I had a spare hour, and I thought, I'll get through this, I'll watch it in a few parts kind of thing. And I was almost immediately struck within the first 10 minutes of being like, this is really good. Wait a second. Why did I not like this? And then as I, went further and further through the film, I was like, this is a masterpiece. What was I thinking back then? I clearly missed something. And yeah, I fell back in love with this film. And it was really interesting because even if I was to enjoy it more again, I was surprised at just how much I enjoyed it. So yeah, I've come a long way. I've come a long way. And it does show you that like maybe giving these films another chance to kind of settle in your mind is a good thing to do. And I did find that with some of Godard's work. I think it was like in the later half of last year when there were a few Godard films popping up on the list that I had seen before. And sometimes having a little bit of context and knowing what's happening does help with your enjoyment of the film on a second time round because you kind of can just settle into it instead of being like, wait, what's going on? And I think there was an element of that to this rewatch. And I feel like an idiot because this is great. This is great.
Well, it does. I wouldn't say feel like an idiot. I mean, you were a lot younger and it's an evolution of who you are and your understanding and relationship with film. But I think that's quite an interesting comparison, Alex, actually, Federico Fellini and Jean-Luc Godard. I think Fellini is probably more my bag. I think they both are artists who are interested in the deconstruction of storytelling and, the dreamlike quality of storytelling. It's just Godard for me is a little bit too enthusiastic about ripping apart, what the conventions of cinema are. And sometimes, I kind of lose the story kind of gets lost in that for me. And I'm less interested in the machinations of storytelling, less than the actual storytelling itself.
Yeah, rebellious for like rebellious sake kind of thing sometimes.
Which I think, if I had been around circa 1965, and I was a student of cinema, I might have really latched on to what Godard was doing more. But as a modern viewer, perhaps that's my issue coming into that. But yeah, Fellini is no stranger to telling you straight away with this film that it's about it's about this dream landscape. I love how this film begins with this dream sequence with Guido, our main protagonist, who is literally trapped in a traffic jam, who escapes by like levitating into the sky and then only to be pulled back briskly back to earth by someone with a rope. So this immediately lets us know or lets us into, Guido's subconscious, and lets us know that this is going to be a film about entrapment, about escapism, which is exactly what happens, and it's pretty intoxicating.
And it's not like fully based in reality either. What you're watching is going to be merging between fantasy and reality. It is a really striking beginning as well.
Oh yeah, this 360 pan of this colossal production that's unwieldy, and all the garish individuals that are occupying that space. It's with Flight of the Valkyrie playing in the background. It's announcing itself pretty early.
It's great, and the kind of the ratio of the film. I don't know if you felt this as well. Like it filled up the TV.
Sure.
The kind of black and white cinematography is fascinating. It's kind of more white than it is black most of the time, and you just get this big, wide, beautiful kind of. It's very picturesque. This film, like the way it's shot. It just feels
dynamic.
very grandiose and epic, despite the fact that it is just about this guy fantasizing and struggling with a kind of creative block whilst creating a film. And it is all very meta for kind of Fellini's own personal life. Guido's pretty much a stand-in for himself. Even the title of the film, 8.5, is a reference to the amount of films that Fellini had directed up until this point. I'm not sure if the half is a short film or whether it relates to the film itself, as in it was during production when he came up with the title or something. I don't know. I haven't researched it heavily enough to know.
Yeah, but I did no research coming into this, watching the film, and I had just assumed in my mind, I made it up, that 8.5 was just referencing Guido's filmography. But yes, that makes more sense that it would be Fellini's. But yeah, I don't know what the half thing is about. maybe it is this film. Maybe it is.
Somebody tell us. Somebody tell us.
True story. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating film, despite its small subject, which is essentially, like I've mentioned, a creative block, but a man who is a bit of a serial womanizer, and many women coming into his life that, some he's done a bit dirty and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's very self-confessional. For its, I'm not in a way that's like, aren't I great for telling you my deepest, darkest secrets? I think he is definitely trying to unearth and wrestle with his own feelings as a lover, as a creative, of all these things, and he puts himself up to trial quite well in this film in a way that doesn't feel self-indulgent.
Yeah, there is a monologue at the end, just after he fantasizes about shooting himself whilst all the journalists are trying to ask him questions about his latest film, and he sacks off the film, and I can't remember who's saying it to him. They're talking about how art is like this kind of unachievable thing. And I don't know, it just really struck a chord with me this time. I was really kind of swept up in the emotion of it in a way that clearly I wasn't back in 2018. And it just kind of left me feeling like kind of very contemplative and kind of thoughtful about my own kind of creative endeavors. And which is weird because I was probably more engaged in kind of filmmaking and screenwriting back in 2018. So it doesn't make sense to me that I didn't really get it. Whereas now, having, not being as creative in those areas, and the podcast is more my kind of creative pursuit in terms of kind of itching that kind of film itch that I have, that I want to be able to keep doing things. Yeah, just, I don't know. It hit me. Quite hard.
I think, you studied film. I didn't, but perhaps that kind of comes from whenever you're studying film, you've got a new lease of life. You're trying to absorb as much cinema as possible. The energy of film, and when you're circa like 18 to 20 years old. You're not really at a retrospective, reflective period of your life. So it makes sense for those sort of films not to resonate with you as much as they do. In years to come. So, that I don't think that, again, like earlier, I don't think that's something to apologize for. I think that's just kind of part of growing, and it's amazing that films can operate at these dynamic levers where we can sort of appreciate them from different standpoints and points of view. It just shows the power of that of the medium. I really love this film, Alex. I think it's it really warrants an interesting conversation. I love the harem fantasy scene that Guido has, where this is very much a movie not just about himself, but it is about the women in his life. So this scene is a dream sequence where he's like living in this sort of almost spa, retreat. Yeah. This sort of perfect little place that he's conjured up for himself, where every woman in his life who in his mind excels in one thing but fails in like everything else, at least in his mind, come together and adore and wait upon his every whim, and all their virtues that he is only interested in they all come together to almost make the perfect woman. This sort of really highlighted to me, Alex, that not only was Guido wanting to exert control and be waited upon by all these people in his life, but I also think he is someone who is genuinely scared of women and the independence that they can gain if he allowed them to be their own person. So I don't know if this is a little bit of Fellini bleeding into the film too, kind of reflecting on how he had his relationship with actresses and cast in this film in the past. It intrigued me anyway. I would have to do more reading about Fellini as a filmmaker, but it felt very potent and a real vocal point of the film, not to mention.
Yeah, to be honest, out of all the kind of fantastical elements of this film, I think that was my favorite one. And he's almost like the king of the castle in this way. And I think you're right when you
it's a grotesque male fantasy.
Yeah, this kind of idea, his fear of their independence, but I think also this fear of they know him better than he knows himself. They truly know his kind of deep.
Oh, they say it out loud, don't they? They say his feelings right to him.
Yeah. And kind of that fear as well. Very good. I really, really loved it, and it looks fantastic. It sounds fantastic.
The production design, that monolithic set that he is forever building, and like for that spaceship sequence, it's a very obvious visual metaphor, sort of like just kind of mirroring the overwhelming pressure and expectations that he faces. But it definitely works.
It's a great set as well. Scaffolding that makes up the poster as well. This idea of, it's going to be some form of space station or something along those lines.
It made me think of Francis Ford Coppola in a way, because I know we've got this sort of monolithic, lifelong project coming up with Megalopolis. Is it Megalopolis?
Megalopolis, yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of reminded me of that, this sort of overwhelming expectation of a director he has garnered such respect and adoration, and people almost declare a masterpiece from people like this. So, you can come at this from all sort of angles. This film is just a real circus, and it reminded me of a film actually that comes a lot later. We're talking in the 70s. I'm a big fan. One of my favorite films of all time is Bob Fosse's All That Jazz, which is a similar film, which is about sort of self-reflection and picking your own, critiquing your own mastery of the art form.
Yeah. And
that harem scene that we just talked about basically is the entirety of All That Jazz, but with like a musical sort of spin on it. So I'm a really big fan of these films. And it's really interesting to see Fellini do it so early on before these other directors, where nobody's asking for him to be confessional. Nobody's expecting this film, but it felt like a real labor of self-reflection and, self-medicating in a way, but not in a way that felt indulgent. It felt beautiful. And it's a film about filmmaking. It's about the process of filmmaking, the endurance a filmmaker has to go to kind of put themselves out there, and it's such a mammoth undertaking. It almost, if you want to be a filmmaker this can almost turn you off the fact to be a filmmaker. So it's kind of maybe when you're in university, this is not maybe the film you want to watch from that
Well,
point of
to
view.
be fair, it was post-university. So
Okay,
a few years after university.
Okay, give yourself more rope to hang yourself on.
No,
Alex.
it's not that.
It
It is almost interesting in the way of like, it's interesting how tastes change, and maybe it is just an idea of like we've been watching these great films, and obviously we've watched quite a lot of Italian films on this list now. We watched another Fellini film, La Dolce Vita, which was really good as well. I do think I prefer this one. It stars the same guy as well, Marcello Mastroianni.
One of the coolest. Another cool guy with a cigarette.
I liked that in La Dolce Vita. He did come across as like kind of like cool but sleazy and slimy. And although he's a horny man in 8.5, he is quite handsome, I thought.
It's perfect for that sort of role where you can see where people gravitate towards him and are both endlessly frustrated by him. It's like he just completely sits on the fence of both of those personas. He's a very dynamic actor. I mean, there's a reason why Fellini favored him. I completely bought him as a weary filmmaker. He just wears the passage of time on his face so endlessly, but can't help but being a pretty handsome, cool guy at the same time.
Yeah, I don't remember thinking that during La Dolce Vita so much, though, about his.
Yeah, I remember just hating him pretty early on because his sort of how he discards women very on in that film and uses them very much as props and toys. Yeah. He does the same thing in 8.5, but obviously he has that sort of, we have this loaded expectation of there's more to this guy because he's got an empire underneath him. So and
he does feel something. He's clearly not looking at the past in a kind of pleasant or generous way. He's almost
he can't help himself.
He doesn't feel completely positive about his past, I guess. But it's turned him into the man he is today. Interesting fact about the film, of many Italian films of this kind of era, completely redubbed. They didn't kind of record any sound or kind of dialogue for the film at all. And in fact, a lot of the actors and actresses would actually just kind of say random lines. He'd feed them random lines because he wasn't 100% sure what they were going to be saying at the time. So it does help that we're watching it subtitled, so you're not really trying to watch how it dubs in with their dialogue, but you can tell that there is some form of delay and things don't fully match up. I imagine that would be slightly more annoying if you were Italian, but it worked. It worked.
Can I say, like, this is in relation to a lot of films that we've been talking about recently that are Italian or from other European countries. Whenever you're watching these type of films on VOD at home, the first thing your mind does, because you're so used to like VOD services messing up with synchronization, is the first thing I think of is like, oh crap, my TV's not working, or I have to go off and on it again. And it takes you like 10 minutes to realize, oh, that's the film. Now I can settle into it. So yeah, if you can see these things on the big screen, then that kind of eliminates that sort of suspicion. But yeah, it's just part of it. I don't really take that away from the film whenever I know the limitations of equipment and getting these things made back in those days and financing. It's very hard with these big, massive, blowy exterior sets of massive cast members. It was a very increasingly difficult task to capture sound that way.
I think the Italians seem to cast more international kind of actors and actresses as well.
Yeah, Dario Argento was
not everybody could actually speak Italian anyway. It was kind of like who looked right for the part more than anything else, and we'll figure it out in the dub later. But interesting that you say about streaming services messing it up. If you try and watch it on Prime, or at least at the time when I tried to watch it, the Prime version does not have subtitles, which is really interesting. So I had to go onto the BFI player to watch this film with the subtitle track, but they do have a really good copy of it. It does look great.
I did manage to get my hands on the Criterion copy, and if anybody has a chance to go see it that way, it is beautiful. Like you said, it fills up the frame, but it looks like it came out yesterday, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it is a really good looking film. So
there's lots of ways to see this film. So I'd assure people, if they're familiar with Fellini, maybe see a Fellini film first, or just give yourself 5 or 10 minutes just to kind of get to know the guy before seeing this film, because it is a reflective piece. But I find it very accessible. I thought it was really engaging from the beginning. I really had a good time with this film.
Yeah, just be on board with something that isn't kind of Italian neorealism. It's a lot more kind of fantastical dreamscape kind of piece, which is just
which I like. I like whenever we're delving into these sort of problematic men. I enjoy that medium of self-confession more than a realistic way. I think it allows an opportunity for our characters to say things that they can't necessarily say in person. It's just a real sort of introspection into their mind, and I think it's a really, that's why cinema is a great medium for telling these stories.
Next week, just to discuss the BFI one first, just because we were just previously talking about, a dream-like, non-linear narrative type film, we're going to be going into another one, which apparently is kind of one of the forebearers of completely non-linear type structure. In fact, people say it plays more like a piece of music than it does an actual film. And it's our third Tarkovsky film on the BFI list. We're going to be talking about Mirror. Are you excited to delve back into the world of Tarkovsky, Kris?
Well, I think at the very least, Alex, it will garner a very interesting conversation between yourself and myself. We had obviously previously watched Andrei Rublev and Stalker, both of which had different relationships with both of these films. You were much more a fan of Andrei Rublev, although I appreciate that film. I was much more a fan of Stalker, so it'll be interesting to see if this is the one where we finally kind of reach an agreement on. I do find him a very fascinating filmmaker, because both of these films that we watched, although had a commonality, couldn't have been any more different. So I'm really interested to see how this revered masterpiece, to see where he comes at it from this angle.
Yeah, some say this is his magnum opus, and I think it is his highest film on the list. I think it is our final Tarkovsky film of the list. The one we had Alfie Hunter-Martin on, he did mention that we should watch Solaris at some point. So who knows? Maybe we'll get to that. I have
it on Blu-ray. I haven't watched it yet, so I have got an excuse to watch it. So
maybe we'll get to some more Tarkovsky post the BFI list, but let's see how Mirror goes first. Yeah. On top of that, so the idea is for next week, we are going to try and watch. Is it Idea Man, the Jim Henson documentary?
It's Jim Henson, Idea Man. Yeah.
Gotcha. Which was directed by none other than Ron Howard, which I think is fascinating in itself. To see him kind of grapple with a very kind of fascinating and iconic person.
And we're big Muppets fans.
We're big Muppets fans. Yeah, we are. And then on top of that, mainly because I got a notification saying that it was now available in the UK, is a film that I had on my watch list. I don't know too much about it, but I was like, Kris, shall we just watch it and find out? I think it's quite highly rated. It's called Snack Shack. So we're going to watch Snack Shack. So
save that.
If you wanted to be ready for the next episode, those are the 3 films to watch. Who knows? Could be more, could be less. You'll find out next week.
And I will try to come up with another terrible segment, unless Alex wants to interject again.
Exactly. I will. I'll take a break. It was actually quite difficult. I'll take a break. I'll leave you to do the heavy lifting.
It's okay. I quite enjoy it, so I'm happy to take the mantle from you, Alex.
Good. So before we do the outro, I just wanted to say that we are slowly coming up to our 100th episode, and we were planning on maybe doing some form of Q&A. So over on our social medias, on our kind of TikTok and Instagram, we'll be asking some questions or like asking you to give us some questions, should I say, that you might want to hear us talk about on our 100th episode. They don't have to be film related. They can be any questions, I guess. But I mean, film is our forte, so
try to keep it clean. Anybody listening?
Yes. We're not gonna dive deep into our deepest, darkest secrets. But if you want to ask us a question or two, we will be doing some more stuff on Instagram over there. But also in the Spotify kind of Q&A section. If you're listening on Spotify, sorry if you're not, because I don't think this feature is available on Apple or anything else. If you scroll down, you'll see a little question where you can submit answers. Well, the question this week will be submit us some questions, so your answers will also be questions. I hope that makes sense, but ask us some questions, and you never know, we might answer them on our 100th episode. It's a few weeks away, but we just wanted to start getting some stuff out there, get some stuff ready for that, and kind of celebrate 100 episodes of the Film Angle.
Came out of nowhere, didn't it?
It did. It truly did. Quite exciting. That has been the episode for this week. If you've enjoyed it, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating or review on your podcast platform. We do really appreciate it.
If you'd like to keep up to date with us, make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Film Angle.
We also have a Film Angle playlist, so if you want to listen to what we listen to, you can find that in the show notes.
Yeah, I've been listening to that lately, Alex. I've been enjoying your picks, but we've got to update it soon. Can't keep it the same all the time.
Exactly.
Be sure to catch us next week for more cinematic discussions. Goodbye.
See ya.